One evening, an older couple, I should first start by saying that this joke that I'm going to use today is dedicated to any of us who ever had a senior moment. And I can tell you from experience that having a senior moment isn't just reserved for those of us who are seniors. I've been having them ever since I was a little boy. But anyway, one evening, one older couple was having dinner at the home of another older couple. After dinner, the women went to one room to have a chat. The men went to another. One man said to the other, "My wife and I had a really great dinner a week ago at a certain restaurant. I highly recommend it." The other man said, "Well, what's the name of the restaurant?" The first man thought and thought, and finally he said, "What's the name of that red flower? The one that we give people we love?" The other man said, "You mean a carnation?" The first man said, "No, no, not that red flower. The other one." The second man said, "You mean the one?" Well, he said, a poppy?" "No, not that one," the first man said. "The other one, the one that has red flowers and thorns." The other man said, "Oh, you mean a rose?" The first man said, "Yes, that's the one." Then he turned in the direction of the women and in a loud voice he said, "Rose, what's the name of that restaurant we went to that we liked so much?" As Valerie said, the title of my message this morning is Get to Know Your Inner Guru. A few years ago, I made a delightful discovery. You probably know that a guru is a teacher, and I'm sure it's no surprise that I believe in having outer teachers. That's why I'm a Unity minister. But in Unity, we say, and we're quoting Charles Fillmore in this, our co-founder, we say, your final authority is the Holy Spirit in you. When I was the minister in Key West, Florida for 6 years, whenever we would have a Sunday service and we were greeting newcomers, we would welcome them, and then we would always say, if you are new here, we invite you not to believe a word we say, just because we say it, but instead, take it inside yourself. And if it resonates with you, if it feels like your truth, then welcome home. The discovery I was talking about earlier is that in Sanskrit, the word guru literally means one who leads from darkness to light. The word gu means darkness. The word ru means light. So Jesus, the Buddha, and Lao Tse, and Mohammed are all gurus. My favorite, as you might imagine, is Jesus, just as it was the one for Charles and Myrtle Fillmore. But it's also important to get to know our inner guru. Here at Unity, our term for our inner guru is the Holy Spirit in us. One meaning of the phrase, the Holy Trinity, is this: God the Father and Mother is Spirit throughout the universe, our Creator and Source. God the Son and Daughter is the Christ in each of us. And God the Holy Spirit is the aspect of God in us that is constantly drawing us toward wholeness, toward becoming, in fact, in expression, the Christ we each are at our core. Manifesting the Christ in us means consciously realizing our divinity, that we are divine love, that we are divine power of creation, that we are divine wisdom, that we are divine aliveness. This realization is where everyone on earth is going eventually. whether we call it our Christ nature, our Buddha nature, or anything else. But by getting to know our inner guru, the Holy Spirit in us, we collapse time and make our path a great deal easier. A Course in Miracles says, free will does not mean that you can establish the curriculum. It only means that you can take whatever part of it you want to take at any given time. It also says, and this is one of my favorite quotes from A Course in Miracles, it says, a universal theology is impossible, but a universal experience is not only possible, but necessary. Being in the dark means being in what A Course in Miracles would call our ego mind. Used in that way, our ego is who we believe we are when we feel separate from God and separate from each other. Being in this state is the path of suffering. What we all want in life, what we all want most of, whether we know it or not, is an experience of inner peace and joy. What Jesus called the kingdom of heaven, which is something we can experience here and now. But in order to have it, we must transform our lives. We must change who we believe we are. You've probably heard me say before, the Russian mystic Gurdjieff said transformation is a kind of rebirth. And then he said, if we want to be reborn, we have to be willing to die to who we thought we were. And he said, the only way we can die to who we thought we were is to wake up. The Holy Spirit in us is constantly giving us wake-up calls. Usually they begin as a whisper or a gentle nudge. And then, if we don't listen, they get louder. Have you noticed that? I sure have in my life. The fact that the knocks get louder is completely our idea because we insist on waking up. Once, when my wife Laura and I were teaching a 6-month-long course in transformation, one of our students, an ex-Marine, was bragging about having a high tolerance for pain. We suggested that he might want to lower his tolerance for pain because it would make it much easier to hear and receive the wake-up calls from the Holy Spirit. More than anything, we all want to wake up. We want that even more than we want physical healing, prosperity, or loving relationships. We want to wake up to when we're believing that we're separate from God, and we want to wake up to our divinity, our oneness with God, our Christ nature. Jesus called this realization the pearl of great price. In Jesus' day, and in that part of the world, pearls were the most valuable thing they had. They were the equivalent in value to what diamonds are in our world. And people used to go searching for them, merchants would go searching for them all over in places like the Red Sea and as far away as the Indian Ocean. So here's Jesus in Matthew 13, verse 44 through 46. He said, the kingdom of heaven is like a treasure hidden in a field. He said, when a man found it, he hid it again, and then in his joy went and sold everything that he had and bought that field. Again, he said, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant looking for fine pearls. When he found that one pearl of great price, he went away and sold everything he had so that he could buy it. One night, a certain woman had a dream. In the dream, she was in a large church, and people were walking toward the front of the church in the center aisle, walking toward the altar. And when they got there, they were all kneeling down and receiving communion. So she joined the line. And when she got to the front and it was her turn to kneel, the man behind the altar said to her, "No, no, no, you stand up." He said to her as he looked her in the eye, he said, "You know what this life is all about, don't you?" And this is what she said. "Oh, yes, I know what life is about. I know that we are born into this world for one purpose, and one purpose only, and that is to know and experience God. I know that whatever happens to us in life," she said, "whatever we experience is meant to bring us closer to that knowing and that experience of God." Truly, the one pearl of great price is the kingdom of heaven, which means knowing our oneness with God here and now. It's the most valuable thing there is. For me, in my first 5 years of ministry, even though I had a lot of outer success, I still had an empty place inside me because I didn't know God. I could talk about God and read about God and teach about God, but I didn't know God. So at one point, when I was hungry enough, I realized that doing a certain 6-month long program, a certain 20-hour a week, $5,000 program was my guidance from the Holy Spirit to do. I knew that I had to commit to doing it, even though I had no idea how I would create the time or the money to do it. I had just begun a brand new ministry in Hawaii, and 200 people were coming every Sunday. And as I said, the tuition was $5,000. But what I discovered was that resources follow commitment. It's never the other way around. Personal transformation isn't something we do as long as it doesn't interfere with our life. Sooner or later, we realize it is my life. My friend, Reverend Joan Gattuso, once told me about a time when she attended an event with the Dalai Lama. He was speaking to several thousand people. And when he finished his remarks, he decided to take questions from the audience. So people submitted questions, and one of them was, what is the easiest, quickest, cheapest way to attain enlightenment? For several moments, the Dalai Lama said nothing. And she said you could have heard a pin drop. And then he lowered his head and he began to sob. All these thousands of people were sat there stunned. And when he raised his head and wiped the tears away, he said, "There is no easy, fast, cheap way to attain enlightenment. It takes everything we have for our entire life." What I know and what you know is that we actually are spirit beings having a human experience, not human beings looking to have a spiritual experience. So the good news is it's totally and completely worth it to give that much attention to attaining the kingdom of heaven. The Holy Spirit in us is the voice calling us to joy, love, and peace. The Holy Spirit will never lead us toward more suffering. Our ego mind, on the other hand, will do just that. According to the Course in Miracles and my own experience, our ego is actually attracted to guilt and pain. Being in our ego mind is a form of insanity. It's why the Indian sage Yogananda once said, everyone on earth is crazy. That's what he meant. Egos live by comparison. It's always who's better than, who's less than. Our ego tells us that we're powerless and that we're always victims. Our ego tells us that we're lacking. So because of that, we have to focus on getting and using people. Our ego tells us that we can't be ourselves. We have to pretend. We have to have an act. However, when we're in our right mind, we know that we are the equal of every person on earth. When we're in our right mind, we know that we are God's power of creation in our own life and that nothing happens to us. When we are in our right mind, we know that we are already whole. So our one need is to simply express the love that we have in our life. And when we're in our right mind, we realize and know that who I am is always enough. I invite you to join me in a commitment to be in our right mind. If you're ready to put spiritual growth first in your life, you will begin to see everyone and everything in your life as your ally, as being for you, never against you. In my life, one of the biggest ways I experience the Holy Spirit, my inner guru, is through guidance. It's why I've said at board meetings for the past number of years in ministries I've served, it's not your way or my way. It's the Holy Spirit's way. And we can all learn how to hear our guidance. Mary Morrissey tells a story about a woman in her church who had lost her job several weeks ago and was feeling really depressed because she couldn't find another one. One day she heard that there was a singles dinner that night and she was invited. But she was so depressed, she felt so bad that she decided not to go. But she kept getting this guidance, this inner nudge to go. But still she decided not to go. Around the time when the meeting was starting, once again, there was that nudge. Once again, she said no. But a half hour later, there it was again, that inner nudge, that feeling that she needed to go. So finally she said, I've been trying to practice listening to my guidance. So if I'm an hour late, I'm an hour late. And she went. When she got there, there was one seat left at a table. And as it happened, the person sitting next to her was a man who had a business and needed someone with just her qualifications and experience for a certain position. She got the job, which was a delight to her to work in. She got the job. All she had to do was listen and follow the guidance she received. Someday in this lifetime, or maybe in a lifetime 50 lifetimes from now, we will all know our oneness with God and live in the kingdom of heaven. Why not commit to that kind of a life right now? When you do, you will come to know your inner guru, the Holy Spirit in you, as your best friend and guide. Remember, free will doesn't mean that we can establish the curriculum. We've already said yes to the curriculum of knowing our oneness with God. How do we get to know the Holy Spirit as our inner guru? Well, if you and I met on a street in Manhattan, and I said to you, how do I get to Carnegie Hall? You would say what? Practice, practice, practice. Let's practice knowing ourselves as one with God in this lifetime. In fact, right now. How do we do that? We practice being divine love, divine power of creation, divine wisdom, and divine aliveness. Let this be your time to claim the pearl of great price, knowing yourself as the divine being you truly are. If you're ready, please affirm with me these two statements and then get ready for change. I'll say them once and then ask you to join me in saying them aloud. Here's the first one. I already agreed to know myself as divine. Together. I already agreed to know myself as divine. And here's the second one. I am now ready to commit to this consciously. Together. I am now ready to commit to this consciously. You don't have to know how. Remember, resources follow commitment. Have a wonderful week as you practice getting to know your inner guru by asking for, and listening to your guidance, and by practicing being divine love, divine power of creation, divine wisdom, and divine aliveness. Namaste.